What is going on, everyone? Chris with Journals Comics. I have an awesome video today. I'm going to be reviewing some comic books from an independent company called Grandway Comics. I'm going to show you guys right here. This is a little flyer that I received. I'm very excited to do this video today and to let you guys know of Grandway Comics. Now, they sent me 3 books that I, over the last couple of weeks, took some time out to read. And guys, I'm going to be going over each of these books. How I'm going to break this down is I am going to first give my my personal opinion as a collector, as a hobbyist, and then I'm going to break it down more in a business sense and give my kind of business perspective on everything. So just a little backstory, and I'm wearing my Montreal Expos hat today because this is a Canadian-based company, so I had to rep and give some Canada love. The company has 2 founders, Jeff Knott and Derek Jessam, and they're just, really pushing this brand as obviously something that they love. They are both co-writers and artists, and they have a small team, but they're really, I'm just first and foremost impressed with the product. I'm impressed with the feel of the product. I talked about a little bit about this in some past videos, just when I was letting viewers know that I will be reviewing. Let's just start out by going into what I feel about the product itself in terms of the aesthetics, and then we'll get into the stories, okay? I love these books because, for one, they have the newsprint paper inside, and for those that watch my channel, you know me, you know that I am old school in that way. I love the newsprint. It still has really nice color pop though. It's definitely more of a white, thicker newspaper type page with bright colors. They do use like a CMYK color scheme, where it's like the 4 basic colors. So again, very retro. A lot about their books and their lineup and their brand is very throwback, very retro, but I like the feel. It really has the feel of any comic book that you would get, early 90s prior, right? And to me, that's quality. A lot of independent companies, and this isn't a knock, but when you think of up and coming production companies, a lot of them don't even have the proper, 6 3/4 by 10 inch or whatever the dimensions of a comic is. It's on a different type of paper because they're just really trying to produce a cheap product that they can afford to get out there before they get proper funding and so forth. So for them to look this great, they have a nice logo. I really love the logo as well. Good placement. Yeah, so you got a $3.99 cover price for Canada. Was it $3.25? $3.25 US. So cheaper than any other books out there right now. So let's go into story, huh, guys? So look, we have the first one I read was Space Cowboy and the Triumphant Tears. Okay. The second one was Grand Adventure. It had 2 stories in it. It had the story of Laser Boy and then Wild Girl, right? Wild Girl, yep. And then the last one I read was Street Fighting Man. And I'm going to break down the stories and how I felt about them as a reader, as a collector. So let's go into Space Cowboy. What I got from this was it was very old school banter, kind of a you don't take this too seriously type of tone. I don't know if that's what they were shooting for, but that's what I got from it. Like reading the dialogue, you really felt like you were reading a Stan Lee story from the early 60s. It just, so for those maybe collectors that are older, that were around in those times, or that just enjoy books from that era, you would absolutely love this. And let me tell you guys what I absolutely loved as well. On the 3rd page, look at this ode. This is awesome. Who else sitting there on a bench? Who do you think that is? Stan and Jack. That is, I loved seeing that. That was big. What a way to give respect to the greats. The art is fun. You know, it's got a very throwback kind of John Romita, you know, style. I even think, I forget who it was, Jeff or Derek's, one of their inspirations was John Romita. You know, you got like John Buscema, you know, all those, Gil Kane. I'm naming those names personally, but, and I love that. You know, it's very classic, not too complex, but still very vibrant. And you know, was done in a way that really tells the story, and I like that. Now, like I said, back to the story, it was very, this wasn't a very take seriously type of read. I mean, you have characters like Babyhead, that's the main antagonist right there, and I forget this guy's name, but he's like a giant with a big cat head. It's very silly. And you know, me overall, I don't like too much silliness. But I know that there's readers that do, and I felt that it worked, right? Another thing that I liked about this, we didn't really get an origin story of the main protagonist, Space Cowboy, right here, but we get a little bit of a backdrop. He's from another planet, and he comes down to Earth, and, you know, it feels, you know, a very kind of an Optimus Prime type of take, where he's like, you know, I feel humanity does nothing but, like, kill themselves. You know, they're always fighting in war and destruction, but yet I see something in humanity that's worth saving kind of approach. And you kind of got that message in a few of the pages here and there, and I really like that they incorporated kind of a deep message. Now, of course, this is only issue 1, so whether or not we're going to, you know, learn more about the origin of these characters, and whether or not they'll dive into more of a deeper moral plot, that has been yet to be seen here. But overall, like I said, it was a fun read. And if you really, like I said, I mean, this was like a very Stan Lee 1963 type story. Very, you know, maybe like old school Avengers fun. Yeah, so that's kind of how I felt about that. Let's move on to the second book here that I read. I think this was probably my favorite. Grand Adventure. And I think it kind of reminded me of I remembered it, and now I forgot it again. Oh man, like kind of like an Elf Quest, you know, from the early '80s. You got Laser Boy and Wild Girl. One thing that I loved about this was they used another artist for the backdrops, and I'm gonna show you guys. Well, just look at the first page here. This is the style of the backdrops. So you got the, you know, the main artist, and then this different style for the background. I loved reading this just because of falling into the world. It really painted the picture of the world of both Laser Boy and Wild Girl. That's so like look at this. Look at this, just beautiful. You see Wild Girl on her bird. I forget the bird's name. Look at that background. Look at the waterfall. The colors. It's beautiful, and I like it on the black pages. And for those, you know, that are Todd McFarlane fans, you know, he came hard on the black pages with the 1990 Spider-Man series. And the first few issues that he did, I believe, had the black pages, and I really enjoyed that. I even think the early Spawns have the black pages. So, but this mix of artistry really made the pictures pop. It made the story come off the pages. And, you know, these characters had a lot of mysticism and that kind of really sci-fi fantasy vibe that I'm personally a fan of. So, like I said, you know, if you're a fan of like an Elf Quest, or even outside of comic books, a very kind of a, you know, Hobbit, Lord of the Rings lore, you know, it really would speak to you probably. Look at this. This is a volcano that's like a living volcano there. Just beautiful, beautiful artwork. So I loved reading these stories. These stories still had a very kind of retro tone, where you know, you had that kind of wacky banter, fun, free-spirited. You had a lot of the talking out loud that doesn't really exist too much in comics anymore, but it was a lot more grounded. And again, I don't think, looking back, there wasn't really much of origin story in this, but you learned a lot about, especially like Wild Girl. You learned a lot about like her village and her community and where she came from, and all that could lead into an origin story probably later down the road. But again, this was probably my best read. There was some depth to the antagonist, like the Laserborn antagonist. It was very much like a kind of it had a deeper meaning to it, where the antagonist was jealous of the protagonist, and there was like that lesson there to be learned, of, and even like a abuse of power, and so forth, or being jealous of someone else's kind of power and role within a community. So again, I see a theme here with Grandway, that there's a very, and I wouldn't say it's political. I think that term, to politicize things, is used way too much. I don't think these are political messages. They're very low undertone, like life messages of how we look at situations, and how we handle situations, to look at ethics and morale, and it's very Kantian type of philosophy going on here. But it's not like so extreme that it's a complex read. It's very minimal, and I think that's very good to attract older readers. But yet it's the stories are very basic and fun, to where they can really speak to younger readers as well. All right, let's move on to the Street Fighting Man. Very, very Luke Cage, Power Man type of a story, kind of mixed with Iron Fist, and I really liked it. It's very retro. I mean, down to the dialogue and the clothes. It's like I felt like I was in like the early 70s reading this book, and that's one thing I question. Like, is there a timeline? Do they exist in the past in this universe, or there was talk of multi-dimension in this book, so maybe if they expand on their universe, maybe we could see time traveling, or multi-dimension type of a multiverse, where Street Fighting Man exists sometime like in the past, or in a different dimension that exists in the past. Who knows? But this was fun because they kind of tied in a very kind of a Eastern mysticism, where the Street Fighting Man learned martial arts. He ended up going to the military to fight the war, and he lost his best friend. And there was an origin of the Fighting Man, or the Street Fighting Man in this, and the origin was very, very Luke Cagey. Maybe a little too much Luke Cagey, but like I said, I think they kind of took the two characters of Iron Fist and Luke Cage and kind of put them into one, because you have that kind of influence of kind of like an Ancient One type of influence, in like a Grand Master or something. I forget his name off the top of my head, but and he's like running from the government. He's a wanted man, and he's bulletproof. So, but again, I just felt like the writing was on point. And again, this wasn't too out there. You could take it seriously, but still very, very throwback in almost every way. So, look, overall, I'm going to get into the business stuff here. Overall, as a comic book fan, I love this stuff. I loved it. I think this is very refreshing to read. Because I love the old stuff. Now, when you talk about the stories, I like the evolution of the stories. Now, I don't mean where you get stories that hardly have any word bubbles on each page, and one book that costs $3.99 doesn't even get through a story arc or anything, and you're like, really? Like, what did I just read? There was nothing. There was no substance there. But I'm talking about how the stories have evolved and matured. In the way that they're written. We saw a lot of that with Frank Miller or Mateus in the 80s, right? And this is very, very old school type writing. And let's get into the business and kind of address those things and what I think it means for if this product is marketable. If we have to talk about market and who are these books for, right? I think these books are for, first and foremost, a lot of collectors that are a big percentage of the market still, that are older now. You talk about more middle age, maybe 30s to 60s, aged collectors that have been around since either the 60s or the 70s, even the 80s, and they really are big on those eras. That it really gives a little bit of mix of some modern with a very retro feel. I think if you are a collector that always complains about how these stories aren't for you any days, I don't pick up new stuff, I don't read the new stuff, or it's this and that, and it's too much this or not enough that, these stories, you can get lost in them and you would love them, and it would take you back to the time that you are fond of and very nostalgic of. So first and foremost, I think that these comics speak to those collectors. I also think it speaks to the young readers. These are very, very young reader friendly books, and we know, based on sales and based on the market, regardless of what a lot of people out there think, the young readers are reading comic books. The young readers actually, I think, were the highest percentage increase of sales in 2019. And that's for print. That's for single issues as well as, like trade paperbacks and whatnot and graphic novels. But, if you get your kids young into stuff like this, I think that they will really get pulled into this and really enjoy it. Let's talk about some. So I talked about pros when it comes to the young readers. Let's talk about maybe some cons when it comes to the young readers. The one thing I worry about with young readers with these is that they're a little too retro. I think we have to understand that kids these days are like, they don't take them for granted. Like when my kids were, in single digit ages still, I mean, they were teaching me how to work modern technology, right? And we also have to think about how stimulated we are. I think the simplicity in the stories of old school comic books can be a bit, I will say it, boring to these young kids. And it's simply because they need stuff that constantly stimulates them, like at a rapid pace. It's like, and I get so tired of it, not to take my kid's phone. My kid will be playing video games and have his phone watching like Twitch streams at the same time. And it's like, give me that phone and play your video games. Or, like, oh man, it's a constant influx of stimulation. And I worry that the tone of these books, and you mix that with the art where, obviously the digital art of the modern era has a lot more certain type of stimulation within itself. So that's a bit of a concern for me. So, and I'm not trying to throw my advice out there, but maybe one area where I would look at it is, I think this company has their niche market. Look, if you can make it in an industry with a niche market, and you try to expand into so many different markets at once, or so many different types of consumer markets, you're probably going to be putting too much out there and have too much to handle, and you could fail. If you could put so much of your resources into a niche market and build off of that, and build momentum off of that, and then expand, I think that is the way to do it, and I think that's what they can do here. I like their niche market. I think they can build off of this. And, if revenue comes in and they start pushing issues, then they can kind of separate, well, let's have a character or one title that does bring in a little more of that modern feel to it. But at the same time, though, when you talk about niche markets, that saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So, when you look at these issues, that they're focusing on 3 titles right now, are all their eggs in one basket. And you could kind of argue that just with the style of writing and the tonality, but at the same time, they are very different stories at heart. Like I said, you have the very, very kind of the mysticism of fantasy here. This is more like sci-fi adventure, and this is more of that action adventure, really grounded. So they are different at the same time. So let's see, where else can I go with this? I really feel like there are more pros than cons here. But with everything that a startup does, you're going to take risks. And I think the biggest thing with this is you don't want to be dated. You look at competitors where they might be trying too hard to be like the next thing. And when you look at Marvel and DC, and where you look at how companies like Image and Boom have really been successful, they completely separated themselves from the Marvel and the DC brand, and they did what they felt worked for them, and it worked, right? So you can have that with this situation, with Grandway, but it's really a fine line. You know, it's really a fine line, and I think right now they're probably out there testing the waters. I don't know too much of what they've done with marketing, but you know, I have very positive feelings about Grandway as a whole. I wish them success. I really hope that everyone takes the time to check out their website. They have the physical copies of their #1s available for sale. They have digital copies available as well. And right now they are trying to get the second issues off the ground, but they definitely need community help. They need fan help and consumer help, and we need to give them the opportunity to check them out and, you know, put our money where our mouth is and invest in a quality brand that we could enjoy. And if this stuff speaks to you, I would recommend supporting a local company that I think has all their heart into this, and they can be doing really good things with their company here. You know, if you guys have kids, you know, and you want to get your kids into comic books, I think these are awesome books. Especially, look, I think when you talk about gender with young boys and young girls, I think the Grand Adventure story can really speak to young girls as well. And you know, there's heroines in A Space Cowboy too. There's two characters, I forget their names off the top, but there's this one that's kind of like a Wasp character, and this one that's kind of like a Goliath character. So you know, again, guys, I think for the sample taste that I got, I'm really enjoying it. You know, I hope to see them involved and continue to get support. Links will be below, guys. Check them out if anything, and please, you know, just keep your ear out for them. Spread the word. Let your friends, family, fellow collectors know, and just, you know, like I said, support some local goodness, especially for all of you that do nothing but complain. And yeah, I'm going to pick on you because, guys, like I said, you don't like the way the big two are handling things right now. You want something fresh. You love how comics were 30, 40, 50 years ago. This is your opportunity, guys. Look at that. I mean, even the ads are so retro. It's like I picked this up from 1972 or something, guys. Grandway Comics. I just want to say to Jeff and Derek, thank you again for giving me the opportunity to do this review. I wish you both and all the other members of Grandway the best of luck in the future. Please keep in touch with me. You know, I would love to keep you know, spreading the word about your company, and I hope nothing but the best for Grandway Comics in the future. And for all of you guys, thank you for watching. Again, don't forget to check the information below for Grandway and check out their website and go support. And if you're new to my channel, please subscribe if you haven't done so yet. Thank you all for watching, and until next time.